This is Almost 107, a Fanshawe College journalism student podcast. Get real.
During the last episode, we talked to Mike Stubbs about how the sports broadcasting industry has been changing. Mike described it best when he said,
"We've taken off the shackles because everything is available. Everything could work."
This phrase perfectly sums up our guest on this episode.
While I'm shooting this video, the game is still going on upstairs. It's the third period, it's 8-2. I'm not watching the rest of that. Oh, I'm just checking. There's about 4 minutes left and it's still 8-2, which means they haven't allowed a goal for like 5 minutes. Congratulations!
Hi, I'm Dan McCracken, and on this episode of Almost 107, you'll be hearing from Steve Dangle and Rick Zamperin. For all of you Toronto Maple Leafs fans out there who are, let's say, maybe under the age of 30 to 40, you probably already know who Steve Dangle is. But for those who don't, Steve is a Toronto Maple Leafs fan and a YouTube content creator. He also has a podcast network under his own name, the Steve Dangle Podcast. Steve is most known for his YouTube videos that he calls Leafs Fan Reactions, where he, well, you know what? I'll let him tell you himself.
Hi, I'm Steve Dangle. This is the final LFR of the season. LFR, what does that stand for? Leafs Fan Reaction. I do one of these after every single Leaf game, and this is the final one of the season because Leafs lose 3-0 to the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Steve perfectly portrays the emotion that most Leafs fans are feeling in real time. Because, as most of us hockey fans know, the Leafs have a long history of suffering.
Between Bergeron, who tied the game and won it in overtime. He scores! David Pastrnak wins it for Boston!
I was able to connect with Steve over the phone while he was driving into Toronto to record his podcast. So, I'm curious, Steve, what motivated you to start your own YouTube channel?
So I was in my second year of school when I started my YouTube channel, and there were a lot of parts of me that felt outmatched and out of my league with a lot of my colleagues and just behind in terms of practical experience. A lot of them had jobs in the industry or internships in the industry, mostly internships, and I just felt like I was falling behind in that regard. I made a video after the first Leaf game in the 07-08 season with no plan in mind. Then I made one after the second game with no plan in mind. And I decided to myself at some point between games 2 and 3, like I might have even been like pre-drinking for a party or something. By game 3, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to do this for every game. And I missed a few, but not many. And over the years, I'm heading into season 18. I think I've missed 7 or 8 videos. I missed one video this past season because my daughter was born.
It's a pretty good excuse.
Yeah, pretty good excuse. And then usually the standard is unless someone dies, I'm making the video. So it's I wanted to start my own channel to give myself some more on-camera experience, but it was also kind of an exercise in discipline.
So like you said, you've been covering the Toronto Maple Leafs for 17 years now. How would you describe the changes in sports media over your career?
Well, a lot of it is good, obviously. Like, you can see the game better. You have better access to players, different angles. By and large, I think sports broadcasting is getting better. The problem is, I think multi-billion-dollar corporations are getting worse. And one of the bad changes I've seen in my lifetime. I was in school. I was in university in 2008 when there was a really bad recession, and a lot of us were sitting around looking at each other, with aspirations of doing something with our lives once we graduated. And we're looking at each other, and we're looking at the industry, and we're like, dude, there's going to be no jobs. There's going to be nowhere to work. And it was kind of a panic time. And there were more places to work then than there are now. Like it's like all the trees kept getting cut down. What's different about today and what's positive about today is it's never been easier to work for yourself. The technology is, it's maybe one of the only things where the price is going down. When I was in school, a gigabyte hard drive was $40. Now they give those things away. Every phone has a camera. Video editing technology is easy and affordable. The industry, by and large, is having a lot of difficulty right now, but it's never been easier to create your own thing.
Honestly, it seems like these same things are still going on in the industry on a yearly basis with the recent layoffs at CBC. And every year it seems like Sportsnet and TSN lay off hundreds of employees. But like you yourself have shown, Steve, it's great that there is this avenue for sports content creators to start their own journey and try and create their own product through YouTube or social media. Maybe it's live streaming on Twitch, which hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, like in 2007 when I started doing this, YouTube was kind of for weirdos, and it definitely wasn't like a viable career path.
One thing is for sure, people have developed a much shorter attention span nowadays. When it comes to sports, most games can last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. I mean, if we see one of the playoff games like a couple years ago that goes into the 5th overtime, that game can be anywhere from 6 to 7 hours long. So it's hard to keep people invested for that length of time. That's where simulcasts and alternate versions of broadcasts come into play, where we can be occupied with other things while the game is being played.
I think people want something different, right? Like that's part of why the Manning cast has taken off. And, you could maybe argue that anything with Peyton Manning, Peyton and Eli Manning would be successful. So maybe it's not that interesting. But, stuff with schlubs like me who never, barely even played high school sports, let alone professional, we can have our own thing, and people find us entertaining enough that they'll watch it. It's really good to have options. Obviously, like look at what Amazon is doing. It's Amazon is basically their broadcasts are kind of designed around what ice surfing at Sportsnet used to be, and ice surfing is kind of designed around what NFL Red Zone is.
For those who don't know exactly what we're talking about, the NFL created a channel in 2009 called the Red Zone. Since there can be upwards of 10 games on at the same time during Sunday football, this channel allows the viewer to keep up with every game happening at the same time, jumping from important play to important play in all the different games. The NHL has created a similar product over the last couple years called ice surfing.
It's good to have all these options. I would say, one thing that I don't recognize from before is a big story would happen and it would be in the news for a month or more. Even though games would happen the next day and the next day and the next day, the big story would always reign supreme. And today, something can happen and it's dead by the end of the week. I remember the Todd Bertuzzi punch on Steve Moore. Like that was months and months, and maybe we haven't seen an incident quite like that since. But like Morgan Riley cross-checking one of the Ottawa Senators in the face, for example, that's a big story. The day it happens, it's a big story. The day he's suspended, and then it's got about 3 more days of shelf life, and it's gone. It just, we all have shorter attention spans now.
Another example of someone who continues to evolve their career in sports broadcasting is Rick Zamperin.
After 23 years and 10 months at 900 CHML as assistant program, news, and senior sports director, longtime talk show host, news anchor, reporter, producer, even a traffic reporter, I am now a free agent. And yet I smile.
CHML was a radio station in Hamilton, Canada that shut down this past August after operating for 96 years. Like we talked about with Steve earlier, cutbacks within the industry are a problem that seems to be getting worse every year. But Rick has remained positive. His "and yet I smile" attitude has led him to starting his own show on YouTube. But what motivated you to go down this path, Rick?
Well, a couple of things. I had been hosting the fifth quarter on CHML for a number of years. So for those who are not familiar, this is the post-game show following every Tiger Cats game. So, not only was I the play-by-play announcer for the Tiger Cats, but a few years after the fact, I became the host of the fifth quarter post-game show in which, we'd see the Ticats win or lose. And for the next hour or so, sometimes longer, depending on how the game went, I would talk to the fans. And it was really that kind of connection between not only me, but the radio station and the fans as well, because they had grown to expect that this was going to come after the game. We would have finally our time to shine, to say what we thought about the player or the coach or the owner or whatever the case is. And so when the station went bye-bye, on August 14th, the next morning I kind of woke up and I thought, this is probably something that I should consider continuing because it's no longer around. The company is not going to put this product in another market because it just doesn't fit or they already have something. And I thought there are so many people who are going to want this to continue. I should keep it going. Okay, how am I going to do that? Well, I thought about the listenership and the age demographic, and I thought Twitch is, would be phenomenal, but it's probably not where they want to be or they even know what it is. So I thought everyone knows what YouTube is. They've heard about it. They know it's easy to watch. It's easy to consume. So I thought, let's launch a YouTube channel and call it the Fifth Quarter Show with Rick Zamperin. And again, after every Ticats game, I would launch onto the airwaves, so to speak, and talk to the fans. And the response has been tremendous.
The greatest thing about YouTube and social media is the free access it can give to so many more people.
Over the last, I would say, 20 years, we've gone through a revolution in terms of making sports as global as they've ever been, because you can watch a game in your home from anywhere around the world, or you can listen to it from anywhere around the world as well. Not only that, you can do it in a variety of ways: on your TV, your laptop, your tablet, your phone, whatever the case is, in your car. It is so transferable, whether it's radio or TV, the audio elements, you can bring it anywhere. And you kind of always been able to do that, but now you can be selective in terms of, I want to watch or listen to the Leafs play Nashville. The game's in Nashville. I'm not there. Well, I can watch it on the TV, whether I subscribe to this cable package or not. I can watch it on my phone through YouTube or several other apps. Nowadays, sports is so much more accessible than ever before.
And of course, like we have talked about several times, in your eyes, how has social media changed the way that we view sports?
Well, I think, when the social media kind of world exploded in the mid-2000s, I'm not sure they specifically had sports in mind. I think it was just maybe, from their standpoint, a way to connect people all over the world. But I think they soon realized that sports is a big part of our day-to-day lives. It connects communities. It gets us excited. It makes us sad. There's a range of emotions that sports kind of triggers within us. And social media giants thought that they could capitalize on this. So whether it was, being able to show video clips of certain games or highlights, whatever the case is, it's sharing the message of that league or team or whatever the case is. And I think leagues and teams have done a phenomenal job of utilizing social media to say, hey, not only are we out here, but we have a great story to tell. Come buy our product.
How do you think the storytelling aspect has changed in sports over the years? Because again, back in the day, mainly it was just the meat and potatoes. Okay, this game happened. What was the score? Who won? Who lost? End of story. But now we're about so much more than that.
It's a lot more glitz and glamour now, and I think, this harkens back to your comment of the attention span, because the attention span of today's generation is much less, and that's not being critical. It's just a fact. It's much less than what it was years ago. And I think the more splash or flavor, whatever the case is, whether it's graphics or analytics or, just some mind-boggling statistics or something funny happened at the game, while everyone can kind of relate to it, I think today's generation gravitates to that. They want to see more of it. So, yeah, I think that's only going to be
kind of accentuated and made even more grandiose in the years to come. Not to get to a silly standpoint, but I think networks are thinking about and utilizing today's technology to make their broadcast, whether it's audio or visual, stand out even more so. So, and I'm excited to see what they come up with.
One of the controversial changes to how we consume sports is how popular gambling has become. It seems like every game we watch on TV has commercials that encourage us to gamble, and there are even advertisements all over the field. Any website or app we go on to look up a sports schedule or check out the live scores will show us who the favorite is to win that game and what the odds are if you want to gamble on them.
There is a double-edged sword for sure. I mean, sports betting has been around a lot longer than I think a lot of people realize, in the not necessarily the early days of the NFL, but, a few decades ago, the NFL didn't really have a relationship with bettors, but knew it was around. And it was a large part in why the NFL has grown to what it is today, because you could bet on games. There was always a number out there. There was always odds makers, laying down lines or whatever the case was. But now it is, every single game is like the Super Bowl. You can bet on literally everything. And while from a revenue perspective, it's unbelievable for those online casinos or whatever the case is, from the league standpoint, it's huge because now more eyeballs are, being cast on your product. The players are, asking for more money because the league is making more money because we have all these sports. It is a huge monumental circle. And now you have all these other broadcasters like Amazon willing to pay billions of dollars to show, one game a week for the next 10 years.
The one sports prop that always blows my mind every year it comes around is the Super Bowl people betting on the over under of the national anthem length. Mm-hmm. Whoever sings it, that one always just, I have a moment of like, well, how did we get here? What happened?
Yeah. And, from a novelty bet perspective, that has, grown even from, the Super Bowl. You can bet on who's going to win the presidential election. What's the first day it's going to snow in Toronto? I mean, it's become a little crazy, but yeah, if these online casinos are making money off those kind of novelty bets, they're going to continue to do them.
Rick and Steve are perfect examples of how to adapt and change within the continuous evolution of sports media. Even when it seems like some of the giant sports companies are cutting jobs every year, there are still many ways to create your own product. Thanks for listening to the evolution of sports broadcasting. I'm Dan McCracken. Find other episodes of Almost 107 on our website, 1069thex.com, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.